Today, we're working on a $729,000 Lamborghini Revuelto. Now, the big question is, how does this compare with the Ferrari 296 we did a couple months ago that had sanding marks, compound, just a total hot mess? Is this better, the same, or even worse than that Ferrari? Find out today on this episode of Drive and Protect. The Lamborghini Revuelto is a mid-engine plug-in hybrid unveiled in March of 2023 as the successor to the Aventador. It has a 6.5-liter naturally aspirated V12 with 825 horse, along with 3 permanent magneto motors, which combine for 190 horse for a total output of 1,015 horsepower in an all-wheel drive car. Completely insane. Now this one comes with an 8-speed dual clutch and it weighs about 4,000 pounds. But this one in particular is Viola Pasifae, in other words, purple, and it clearly needs some paint work. You can see dust, dirt, leftover compounds, scratches everywhere, watermarks, and mud in the wheel wells and door frame. Now, step one obviously is just a very quick wash to be able to assess the real condition of the paint outside under the sun without all that junk on top of it. I'll do another wash later on that's going to be more involved, but for now, I just need to see what I'm looking at. When a brand new car comes in and it's super dirty, the first thing I do is wash it, which I did there, and now we're gonna be switching it to bay number 1. But after the wash, I pull it outside and I do a little analysis, try to figure out what's going on here. So let's go through that right now. First things first is if you look, you can see right here very closely that there's compound jammed in here. So that's the first thing I saw when I pulled it outside, and I go, okay, so if there's compound in here, there's gotta be a reason there is compound. And you can see there are swirls absolutely everywhere here, and here, and up here. You see those swirls? Just crazy. Now these are the big ones here. Now the reason that that's a concern is that when you have swirls like this, you are generally working with, let's say, a rotary polisher. Why would you need a rotary polisher? You need a rotary polisher because you're taking out sanding marks. And I go, okay, if you're taking out sanding marks, that means there was some sort of imperfection, which is somewhat normal when it comes to any car, but no less supercars, that you have to go in and sand it after you paint it. Fine. The problem is, if you look very closely right here, you can see that they sanded all the way up to the edge. And so as a rule of thumb is, pun intended, when you're polishing, you want to put a thumb's distance in between an edge or high point. Why? Because if you go all the way up, if you sand all the way to the edge, that means I have to then polish all the way up to the edge to get those sanding marks out, right? And if you do that, you have a chance of burning through this edge. Now that the sanding marks are here, they decided, oh, wait a second, I'm going to go in and rotary polish all this stuff, hence the swirls, but I'm not going to go to the edge here, because I'm afraid with the rotary, you can really burn through there. But what the problem is it leaves sanding marks everywhere. So when they come, just like The 296, I have to figure out how to lightly sand all these marks here without burning through, then remove it, compound polish, etc. So that's what I have going on here. How did I kind of come to that conclusion? By seeing the compounding marks. Now, if you look closely here, there's compounding marks all in here. Here's another interesting thing. As I walk around, hard to see, but I'm gonna stand right here. If you can look right in this area, I'll go over and touch it in a second. There is a round circle and blotchiness in the paint itself. There's just a very weird dot circle. So it's almost like the paint didn't lay down properly. We're gonna have to compound and polish this and potentially sand little areas like this. Look at that. Yikes. Beautiful car, but lots of work to do. So far, it's pretty much on par with the Ferrari 296. With the Revuelto in bay number 1 and up on the lift, I started the test spot with a shear cutting pad on a 21mm throw DA polisher and exfoliate polish. Because the defects are a little bit deeper than I initially thought, I switched over from a wool pad over to a coarse wool pad for heavier cutting, and you can see that the pigtails are much better than they were before, but they're not totally removed yet. All right, at this point, I've done a quick 50-50 and I'm starting to work a test panel. And what's interesting about this particular car is it's composite. And so when I'm working on a composite vehicle, I can't just sit there and hammer away at that. What I mean by hammer away is introduce a lot of heat, a lot of pressure, that kind of thing with compounds. So I have to be a little bit more careful. So now in the past, we've talked about it with the 296, the heat expands and contracts, it expands and contracts. So maybe when it left the factory, it looked pretty good, but certainly as it contracted now, it cooled down, all these pigtails are coming back. Now the issue that I have is it's an interesting concept where I think they're using a rotary pad to take out the sanding marks that they put in during the imperfections of painting. Cool, fine. But the next step would be to then go in and refine those. But maybe they're not seeing them because the paint expanded. I'm not 100% sure. My conclusion is what these factories need to understand is they can do the same amount of work that a rotary can do pretty much with a dual action polisher, and it won't leave those swirls behind. At the same time, you're likely to get a lot of these pigtails out. So it's either refine it so much so that you don't need a rotary pad. So instead of finishing out of like 1,000, which this looks like 1,000 or 1,200, finish up at 2,000, 2,500 or 3,000, then you can go in with a dual action machine, take it out, and you're good to go and you won't get those swirls. Or you can do something like leave it at 1,500, then go in and rotary pad it, then go in and dual action pad it. So you sort of have to pick your poison. I can understand their perspective saying like, hey, we're just gonna finish off at 1,000 or 1,500, go in with a rotary and it looks fantastic and we're good to go. But for $729,000, it doesn't look good enough to me or anybody for that matter. If you were standing here in person, you'd be like, what the heck is going on? Every person that's walked in right now is like, really? So that's the concept where I think the manufacturers are sort of playing with. How many corners can we cut and still deliver a good car? My suggestion to you manufacturers is this isn't working, so we need to figure something else out. First is 1,500, next is 2,000 grit, and then 3,000 grit. Then of course compounding and polish in that specific area that was extra pigtaily. For pretty much the rest of the paint, I'm using a coarse wool pad and my new heavier compound with multiple passes instead of necessarily having to wet sand everything. Once I was done with that and it looked good, then I went back in and polished as a last step just to bring back the depth and shine. After all the 6-inch polishing work, then I worked the tight spots with a 3-inch pneumatic polisher. All right, I'm behind the camera right now and you can see that I just polished this whole area and it looks fantastic, but if you look closely right where my finger is, can you see that? That's in the paint. So that's something that I can't really get out. If I were to sand that, I'd have to go all the way down through the clear and then get into the actual paint itself or the base coat. You can see there's a little divot here. I'm finding a bunch of these all over the place. So when we put a clear bra on it, it's just one of those ones where I can't do anything about it. So if it was a rock chip, then I could fill it in and sand it down, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But since this is sub or beneath the clear coat, I can't really do a whole lot about that. So just something to keep in mind when you're looking at a car. There's a certain amount of these where you just have to say, okay, I can't accept it. Is it enough on this car? No, there's probably 10 or 11, maybe 12 I found. So just when you're really inspecting a car, just give the customer a heads up that, hey, I see this imperfection, but I can't do anything about it because it's subsurface. All right, I'm on the back side of the Lamborghini. I'm just doing a lot of the carbon fiber trim. It's looking really good, but check this out. I've never seen this before. The Lamborghini badge right there, do you see that orange? The Lamborghini badge is forming oxidation. This is metal, and obviously this is carbon fiber, so the metal is starting to oxidize from underneath and squirting out here. So all the more reason when you're done washing a car to use compressed air on the badges, because I guess I've never seen this in all my years of doing this. Certainly on a new car, it started to oxidize, and I just caught it with the pad, so it was actually worse. It went all the way down by the B underneath, and the little edge there I couldn't get. Kind of fascinating. Never seen that before. So food for thought if you're cleaning out your badges, just maybe take an extra second and blow them so that there's no water behind it to cause the oxidation. Interesting. After 2 days of correcting the paint, it's now time for wash number 2, where I can be a bit more thorough and really focus on the suspension, the calipers, the creases and crevices, and so on. Doing this is especially critical before applying any paint protection film to avoid specks of dirt getting caught behind the plastic, and they become very visible once you lay them down.
fantasy.
With the wheels now off the car, I quickly polished the calipers in preparation of Gillette wheel coating. I did the same thing on the wheels themselves, polished, then coated. Next, we installed PPF, or paint protection film, on the freshly restored paint. Now, what's interesting about PPF is that if you have the tiniest of imperfections on the surface of the paint, that film is only going to enhance that blemish once you lay it down. That's why it's critical to correct the surface beforehand, especially when there's dust nibs. Installing plastic film on your paint is extremely time-consuming and very detailed, especially when it's hand-cut for a precise and custom fit. For an entire car, it takes about 5 to 7-ish days to complete based on the complexity and the shape of that particular car. Okay, at this point we're installing the clear bra, and when we do our last little wipe downs, this is when you can start to find little tiny imperfections because into the paint. When you put a clear bra on, they just pop out and they're really noticeable. Right there, got it? See that little, that's in the clear coat right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a little dust nibber, 3000 grit, and just go in there real quick and sand that down, but there's tons of them everywhere. So this is one of the process things that you need to do when you're putting on a clear bra, because once you put that on there, one, you can't really get it off unless you remove it all, but two, if there's any imperfections at all, which there are a lot of that were in the paint, which is the pigtails that we just took off, but now these are dust nibs that weren't taken off at the manufacturer as well. So lots to do on this car. Much better. With the PPF installed and now dry, I applied Reflex Pro 2 on top of the plastic to create a slick surface that would otherwise be grippy because of that rubbery sort of texture and feel of the thermoplastic polyurethane protection, aka PPF. So by installing a coating over the clear bra, you return the feel back to its original slickness and smoothness and softness with added hydrophobic and self-cleaning abilities. So it's a good idea to put a coating on top of your PPF. On cars with really expensive or rare paint, it's sort of like a self-insurance policy. So that's why we do a lot of PPF after I fix the paint on very expensive cars. With the coating curing over the PPF, I focused on the interior, and because pretty much all of it is Alcantara, I used the diffuser and shag to clean up the fibers and to have them stand up straight. I vacuumed the carpets and the mats, and then touched up a few finger smudges and grease spots with lather on the interior. This is likely from the porters getting in and out of the car at the US port of entry. And the window sticker was stuck to the windshield instead of the passenger side window, which always makes it super fun to remove.
All right, I want to make a quick point here. I've been taking window stickers off for 18, 20, I don't even know what it is, for my entire career. And for whatever reason, the glue that's used to stick it to the windows is so strong. And so when I go to take it off, so this is the backing, right? So I'm not ripping, I'm gonna put this in a frame and make it all nice for him, but this is just the sticky part that sticks to the window. There's gotta be a better way to not do this, because when I do take this off, which I have to do with a scraper, and nobody likes to use a scraper on a brand new car, but nonetheless, you do that, right? You take it off, And then once it is off, and let's say it's perfectly clean, this over time, once this gas is out and all the plasticizers, all the plastic in here, this is any car. This isn't Lamborghini, this isn't Ferrari, this is every car I've ever done. Usually it's on the side window, but this is on the windshield. It'll leave a halo in there for months, if not years. And you have to use a lot of isopropyl alcohol and scrub it. And it's just like a thing. So my question is there a better way to put the window sticker on that, of course, is permanent or safe or whatever it is the rules are, without using this old school thing? If you can see, it leaves behind, even with a scraper, all this stuff. It just seems like something that the dealerships wouldn't want to deal with on like 1,000 of these a week or whatever it is that they're selling, you know, of Hondas or whatever. So anyways, if you guys have a better idea of how to stick that to the window, leave a comment below. All right, so mission one is just to get this out, the original out. All right, no cuts, no creases, no issues. That's huge. Now, I just gotta get this off. Use a 50-50 mixture isopropyl alcohol on this one. Let it sit for a second, then go back in with the razor blade. It'll come right off. And you may have to do it a few times because of that halo that we talked about.
With the Maroni sticker in hand, I headed to Michael's to pick up a frame. Then I came back and trimmed the edges, and I left it in the car to surprise the owner during the reveal and pick up later on. All right, now that the Lamborghini's done and looks fantastic, I want to go back to the question that I asked at the top of the video. At what point, as the customer, as the purchaser of this vehicle, can you expect to have perfect paint? What value? $30,000 Subaru, should that have perfect paint? Or only $1 million XYZ car, should that have perfect paint? I don't know. So leave a comment below, let me know at what point, at the money that you spend, should you get absolute perfection. Now let's compare both the Ferrari 296 and the Lamborghini Revuelto. So when I did the Ferrari 296, you remember we had massive panels that were missing steps in the refinement process, meaning there was just huge gaps. Instead of finishing at 1,000 or 1,500 or 3,000, they left it very, very raw, and then I had to finish the steps. Here, they finished the steps, but the process that they actually did to do that wasn't exactly perfect, meaning there was pigtails and marks everywhere instead of the sanding marks on the 296. From a detailing perspective, if I had to compare both of them, I would say that the Ferrari 296 was in worse condition. Having said that, the Ferrari 296 was $500,000, and this is nearly $800,000 with taxes. So they both kind of even out. So again, the question is, at what point should the paint be perfect? Now, the second thing I want to make very, very clear is both cars came in here very dirty. Why? Because both customers asked the dealership, do not touch the vehicles. That is very, very important. So when the car comes from the manufacturer, it goes to the dealership, and the dealership will correct lots of these issues, and then it goes to the consumer. I'm bypassing that because my customers say, hey, just forget about that part, just bring it right to Larry so that he can clean it up. So I want to make sure I'm very, very clear on that. This one in particular was very dirty. Why? Because it sat outside for 4, 5, 6 months during the manufacturing process or whatever it was when it was coming over here, and it just sat out and it got water spots and it was just very dirty. Now that probably 80-90% of that would have been removed by the dealership. I don't necessarily believe that the dealership would have made the paint perfect. That's up for discussion, but I do think the car would have been 1,000 times better, both the Ferrari and the Lamborghini, when they would have arrived to the customer. So I want to be very clear about that, but because of the way that we work here, I want to make sure that I see the car unmolested so I can go through that entire process and make sure it is absolutely as perfect as I can make it for my consumer. So again, super clear, but if I had to compare and all things considered, I would say that the Lamborghini was just a notch better than the Ferrari with respect to that manufacturing and refinement and perfection process, again, with respect to the paint. So all that sort of doesn't matter. What matters is getting behind the wheel, because once we fix it and correct it and everything looks perfect, both the 296, absolutely ridiculous driving machine, and this one here, I haven't gotten behind the wheel yet, but a V12 mid-engine, all-wheel drive, 812 horsepower, you kind of just forget about all the issues on the car. But at the end of the day, everything's been corrected. I think the customer's going to be happy, and this thing is absolutely insane. only thing left to do is to pull her outside and go for a ride. Pull the reverse. On initial startup, the first thing you do is lift this lever, push the start button, and you're waiting for that noise, and you don't get it. And that's good and or bad, however you look at it. But for me, because I have people at home and I would leave my garage if I were to start it up and this thing is crazy loud, not a good look. So I actually do like the city or the Cita mode to drive around. You get 6.2 miles of battery, and then it recharges itself. Now, to have some fun, we're gonna turn it into Strada mode, which would be street, and it should start up. Now, well, that's very nice. All right, so let's go for our first ride. Wow. All right, we're gonna back down even already. That is ridiculously fast. The gears are very, very tall. As I said earlier, it takes your breath away. Now, the thing that I love the most about this car compared to the Aventador is this is an 8-speed dual clutch. So when I drop down, and hammer it, you can feel just how fast that clutch is, where the Aventador is a single clutch. And I think there's a big difference there. So right off the bat, to me, that's huge. Interior, lots of space. I love the steering wheel. There are 1,000 gadgets on here. Now, if you can see in the camera, if you point that camera right back there, I have the wing up. It goes up automatically. You see it just pop down right there based on speed. But when you are cooking, the big issue that I have here is, let's do it again, is when that thing goes up, you can't see anything behind you. So if you got a cop behind you, you're not seeing anything. How funny is that? If we turn left or right, there is the blinker. There's the if you just tap it, listen, 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 and it shuts off. Now if you hold it, now it's going, and now it'll stay the whole time. For some reason, I really like that. So if I'm shifting, or if I'm going from one lane to the other rather, and I just want to do a quick little tap, and just show like, hey, I'm going over there, I don't want it to go the whole time. I just want to quickly tap it. Those little dorky things mean a lot to me. All right, so we're getting back on the highway. Wow. That is extraordinarily fast. That thing is such a beast. When you're not driving it and seeing it going down the road is completely insane. Unreal. Another beautiful Lamborghini. Love it, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next week.